the nonprofit panel, I'm really delighted to have a representative sample from a couple of different industries. Elizabeth Scott from Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. I think she's the only Chief Digital Officer that I know of, maybe one other that's CDO at a performing arts center. And we have Anna Serrano, has come all the way down from Toronto, from the Canadian Film Center. Tom Hjelm, to my right, is doing an incredible job, and he's been around the interactive industry since the early 90s, way back when, and he's a digital fossil. And of course, Christine Montgomery, who's here up from Washington, D.C., from the Center for Public Integrity. So, you know, I'd kind of like to start out just to level set. The challenge, I think, for any nonprofit is to cultivate relationships with the audience. And this has changed dramatically over time. What's the role of the public now? How is it changing, and how is your organization handling this shift? Anyway. Elizabeth?
I'll jump from the standpoint of performing arts. Good afternoon. Well, I think this is going to echo a little bit of what we heard on the broadcasting front, and I imagine what you're going to hear from some other folks later this afternoon. But audiences take a very, very different place in the entertainment landscape today than they did years ago, 5 years ago even. They are just far more empowered. They are far more active, and those kinds of people with the habits that are associated with that have expectations that they bring to any kind of entertainment, including their performing arts entertainment. We in the performing arts are an industry where audience engagement has, let's just say that the relationship has traditionally been a more passive one in the legacy way that we have offered our product. So our challenge is, how do we respond to what are changing audience expectations about their entertainment experiences generally? And how do we go about offering and marketing and even delivering the product itself in a way that's going to meet those changing expectations? Real shortly, I think, or briefly, you see audience having voice and audience having agency in a way that they haven't before, and they will look to do that with the performing arts in a way that they haven't historically. How they elect what they're going to go take in, how their experience of it actually happens while they're there, and how they author their meaning about it after the fact. These are all things that we haven't necessarily, as an industry, given a lot of attention to until just recently. I think that chart, I'll just say what that means for what we do as a result, if that's a good natural follow-up on it. I think it means that across all parts of our organization, we need to be adjusting the way we go about meeting that audience, right? So from the role of the marketer, take that one first. We've got audiences that are really looking for information and access and nimbleness of that information being provided to them. They are the same folks who are looking for spontaneity and who actually are spontaneous in the way that they go about electing their entertainment. So this means a world in which a single color brochure offering a subscription 5 years ago is not the world that we're in today. And then it's also a world where increasingly the social influence of peers and the credible mass, as opposed to the critical mass, if you will, is influencing what they do. So as marketers, we have to be wrapping around that, moving from transactions to creating relationships, moving from treating our audiences as passengers, if you will, to engaged participants in the offering. Same thing with publicity. We need to be thinking about seeding our brand to the voice of our consumers in the way that has not historically been the case. We have not democratized our talking about our offerings historically, and we are being forced to think about doing that better. And then lastly, just the product that we offer itself, whether it's programming live in the hall or even other kinds of products, media ones, these are things we need to be thinking about to be meeting and exceeding audience expectations.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I just have to say, before we jump to the other panelists, Elizabeth is in a unique position, right? Because the argument is that if you put everything live, like on Bright Cove, and you stream it out, people aren't going to come to the opera. They're not going to go to the Met. They're not going to go to Juilliard, right? She has, what, 11 properties at Lincoln Center? What are those 11, some of those 11 properties?
11 constituents who are all their own independent organizations on the campus that is Lincoln Center. Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, which is where I work, sits in a way at the center of that, not only as landlord of a good deal of that property, but also as presenters of content and working collaboratively with those folks for various media and other undertakings.
So was there a threat? Did your boss see a threat to you coming in and saying, oh, you know, if we put this online or if we put this in an archive, less people will come to the opera? Or are you looking to amplify the message by getting it out there in other?
The creation of this role by senior leadership and by the board at Lincoln Center was very much with an eye towards answering the question, what is the digital equivalent of what we have just done so fantastically on our campus? For those of you who are in the New York area or who are not, come visit the beautiful campus that's been redeveloped in the last few years. Magical transformation of the place with increased transparency in the architecting of how that redevelopment has happened. The logical next step or frontier for the organization, if you will, in the completion of that was, what will we be doing on the digital front that is of that same quality? What is the media offering that is the the digital destination that our physical destination is?
Beautiful.
So
and
the
I
creation
think
of this role is about that.
And we'll get to the panelists, I'm sorry. But your background is incredible because before this, which is not in your bio, is you were with Major League Baseball. And I think the argument there again was if you're putting this online and streaming it, less people are going to come to the ballpark. When in fact, I believe the opposite is true. It's attracting more people to the game. And I watched most of the World Series on a mobile phone, and I wish that the NHL and the NFL and the other franchises had as good a digital team as Major League Baseball does. So can you give us?
In 13 years at Major League Baseball, and for clarity, I sat on the legacy side of the business. I was the head of programming and business for Major League Baseball, and had a real wonderful front row seat as that industry reinvented itself a good deal before a lot of the rest of us in this room were, and had a real good sense of and heard all the arguments for, if you do that, you'll kill this. Yeah. Right? And what we've seen is really an incredible rising tide lifting all boats with audience attendance, fan attendance at games, having either been stable or grown during a period in which the ubiquitous offering of content across multiple platforms has transpired.
Yeah, but they did it really well. I mean, I'm really impressed with the mobile apps, the interactive, the website for Major League Baseball. Fabulous job. Now, Christine has a slightly different take with the public. I mean, you're in investigative journalism, the most critical piece of information for a populace starved for this kind of reporting. But it's the most underfunded and the hardest thing to do is investigative journalism. How do you then deal with the shifting public? How do you turn viewers into subscribers and keep them coming back and keep supporting investigative journalism at Center for Public Integrity?
Yeah, so I'm glad you said we were an investigative news group because I'm guessing that nobody knows what the Center for Public Integrity is. Anybody? Yes, one for two. Okay, all right, good. All that branding work I've done is paid. Yeah, so the Center for Public Integrity has been around about 25 years. And like most journalists, as a journalism organization, does a horrible job talking about itself. It's pretty small, it's pretty insular, and the feeling for many years was, well, we create this content, what you, the audience, what you, the consumer, does with it is sort of your business. Except that, the center is funded about 99% by foundations. And anybody who gets their money from foundations knows you have to start looking for other revenue streams, right? So we look to the audience. And so the difference is you can't just, as a little bit what you're saying, the difference between sort of here's a 6,000 word report on breast cancer versus here's a really nice performance. But the sort of the relationship is the same. You can't just dump your stuff and then passively expect people to come to it. So what we tried to do was have a plan where we, first we called it membership, which is very much the public media model, but that didn't really work for us because what are you becoming a member of? We really want you to feel like this content is so important, so that it matters so much to you that you want to pay for it. So we, when I got to the center, and I'm sorry, I'm a little bit all over the place here, but when I got to the center, there was a plan that we would earn about $2.5 million in membership revenue. And they're going to be mad at me for saying that, but it is public. And so what I felt like my job was to look at that and say, is that realistic based on the metrics, based on the amount of people who come to our website and the amount of people who read our work in other places, how many people are we going to be able to convert? And so over the last 16 months, we sort of started to use our content to reach people and using all the channels, so using social media, using our website, using our newsletter subscribers, and really trying to first establish a relationship with the audience. And what I would walk around the newsroom saying all the time is, frequency is really important. It's important that we publish a lot, because a lot more than we were used to, because every time we drop a project, we have to reintroduce ourselves to people. Hi, this is who we are, and don't you love us, and wouldn't you consider a gift? Like, it's like dating, right? And so you can't ask for money on the first date, or you won't get a second date. So it's been a long process, and I guess.
Did you get on second?
I don't even know what I just said. I got roll back tape. Yeah, so so the process has been about introducing ourselves to our readers, telling our story better about who we are, and eventually asking for a donation, and not under the umbrella of membership, but just moving the reader or the user to an audience, to somebody who really does seek our work out. We engage to somebody who's engaged with the work, to a donor.
Is there any move from a one-time donation to an annual subscription to keep the revenues coming in, or have some kind of annuity?
Always best to do that, even if it's a small gift, to keep it so that you don't have to go out and get it again every year. So it's started. The needle has started to move, and it's definitely we have the numbers are so small. It's and you mentioned I'm going to the World Bank. It's like, it's incredible, because the Center for Public Integrity has 35 employees. The World Bank has 10,000 employees. Wow. And it's just, the scale is so different. And I came out of PBS, and again, the scale is very different. So, we get about 100,000 people on our website each month. Very low numbers, but we have done a good job of converting a good portion of those people to our subscribers. And again, the subscribers are the ones who eventually give.
So, Tom, New York Public Radio, what a great job you're doing. The CEO there, Laura Walker, a good friend Janice Ellig, Women's Forum member. You've got some incredible content, great programming to take away with Alec Baldwin. You've got, I guess, a membership drive going on right now. Tell us
finished
about
yesterday, actually.
How do you work with your audience and keep them coming back?
Sure. Well, just to take the broad view of things, these are interesting times for public radio. Looking back, public radio and public media has been able to thrive because it effectively has had a sanctuary at the end of the FM spectrum. And thanks to the foresight of Congress and the FCC, through a period of regulations dating back to the New Deal, it's been able to have this protected place that enabled it to do its thing, relatively free of commercial considerations. And that remains the backbone of our business. We have a very thriving, presence on the FM dial. We have WNYC FM, which is the largest NPR member station in the system. We have WQXR, which is the leading classical music station in the country. We have New Jersey Public Radio. We've been buying up stations. So we've got a nice, thriving
How
family
are you
of
buying
radio
up stations? So is it Laura Walker's initiative to really get some funding in? How are you? Sounds like you're pretty well funded.
We're well funded.
Beyond the subscriptions from the audience,
Indeed.
sounds like.
We're a $55 million organization.
Wow.
There are effectively three revenue streams. One is individual members, secondly, philanthropy and major gifts, and then thirdly, underwriting, which is our form of advertising. But the relationship between us and our audience it's very special. It's very precious. 160,000 people give us an average of $112 per year for something they can get for free. Yeah. That's a really unique bond. There's a special compact with the audience. And that's a precious thing that needs to be maintained even as we pivot into being more of a media company. And so part of my challenge and the challenge of my organization and my counterparts across the public radio system is to think anew about what membership means for public media. Radio is not going away, but inevitably there's going to be a tipping point where effectively online becomes the predominant vehicle for receiving or listening to public radio content. So what does digital membership mean? But getting back to the point about the FCC and Congress, there's no corollary for that online. So we don't have that protected zone. We're just swimming in the same sea as any number of commercial vendors and audio companies. And so carving out a special place and maintaining that special bond with the audience is really key. From a product perspective and a technology perspective, also there's a revolution happening, before our ears in the way that people listen to audio. Pandora, Spotify, Slacker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. These guys are blotting out the sun in terms of audio listening online. And they've not only changed, they're not only dominating the market, they're also shifting behaviors. And increasingly, you know, the linear 24/7 stream is giving way to a much more segmented, personalized, on-demand kind of experience. And so part of our challenge is to recraft our programming and our audience proposition in such a way that it now maps to the changing behaviors of what audiences want. And that's a huge shift for us.
Yeah.
Technologically, in terms of product development, and also it's got ramifications for the way that we produce content.
Oh, and I would imagine now that it's online, being an NPR affiliate, you used to have a specific radio frequency that would be broadcast from a tower, and only those people who had a radio within that frequency could listen. Now you put this stuff up online, anyone in the world can listen to your program. How does this affect your relationship with NPR and the affiliates? If there is an issue there, maybe there's not.
I could talk the rest of the afternoon about that issue. So
sorry. Okay.
It's a
Moving on.
complicated issue. No, it's well, I'll say this, that yes, once upon a time, you got NPR content through your local station, right? And NPR, with whom we have a very close and mutually dependent relationship, is a very, very important relationship to us. But, you know, there came a time when the question about who owned, and the issue of who owned the audience,
Right.
and the individual listener shifted.
Yeah.
That dynamic shifted, and that's something we're still sort of working through as a system.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll get a whole afternoon. I would love to hear more about that. But speaking of new kinds of investments, Tom has raised, you know, a lot of his money comes from foundation grants. Was that right, Tom? And Anna came all the way down from Toronto from the Canadian Film Centre. We appreciate her coming, along with Jason Taffler, who came down from Canada, our friends from up north. And you're doing some unique things at the Canadian Film Centre to fund, and also I'd like to also hear your perspective on changing relationship with your audience.
Sure. So the Canadian Film Centre is one of these odd not-for-profits because on the one hand we do postgraduate education. So these are sort of residency programs, kind of like what the American Film Institute does in film, television, and new media. We also do professional development in terms of high-level, mid-career professional development for people in the traditional media sectors, so how to get them to be more digitally savvy. We develop product, so we make feature films, episodic television, interactive products, transmedia products, and we're now doing company acceleration. So in terms of our audience engagement strategy, it's really around, well, certainly one of the key pieces that I'm trying to grapple with is how do we essentially shepherd the development of the next generation type of storyteller, in which the role of the creator now has a much more specific relationship with the audience, and how these new types of creators that we're trying to develop must have a different way of creating their content and engaging the audience all along the production value chain as they develop their content. So unlike Lincoln Center, who may be interested in audience engagement from the point of dissemination of their products, we're actually thinking about audience engagement from the point of how to develop products all along to distribution. So the way we're kind of looking at this is, for example, one of the, we've just recently launched a digital entertainment accelerator called Idea Boost. This is Canada's first accelerator solely devoted around digital entertainment, both content plays and technology enabling technology plays in the entertainment sector. And what we've done is we've kind of married a Kickstarter model with a Y Combinator accelerator model, whereby the internet public is as much responsible for determining which products we end up accelerating in Idea Boost. And this is really twofold. One is to kind of get the content developers and the producers to understand how to start socializing their ideas with their audiences. But the most important part of this is actually because once you get into the Idea Boost Accelerator, the audience members who you've socialized this idea with or your product with then become members of the entire accelerator program.
Great.
So a company that comes in through our Idea Boost program may have as many as 300 to 1,000 unique emails who are part of their boosters, we call them that, and then these 300 and 1,000 unique individuals then become invited to be part of the development process. And what's interesting is, so we just did our first cohort. We see it as a prototype cohort this fall. And 2 of the companies that we've just accelerated are YouTube channels. So what we're seeing now is that the new type of digital content entrepreneur are people who don't even see themselves as entrepreneurs, much less have the kind of business background to really grow their business well, but they understand really intimately that engagement with audiences. So having that type of cross-cultural sort of osmosis happening in this accelerator with traditional media companies trying to develop digital products, and then YouTube creators who understand audience trying to understand how to navigate the entertainment sector has been very interesting.
It's kind of like an Indiegogo or a Kickstarter for independent nonprofit artists kind of thing, or
well, it's
in the socialization aspects, trying to get your friends to support your initiatives?
Yeah, it's really like Kickstarter married to Y Combinator.
Right,
like, do people know what I mean when I talk Y Combinator? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I guess you did say that. And now, good news for you, $3.5 million from Canadian government to support these kinds of initiatives. Is that right? September or so?
Essentially, this particular accelerator has been financed by the federal government, but also our founding partners are Google, Chorus, and Shaw. And that's partially
that's a nice neighborhood.
Because, yeah, it's, you know, people are really trying to figure out how to sort of crack this nut of where do audiences live in your production value chain, and how do you transform that relationship across each phase of your production value chain, but then more importantly, can you monetize that relationship at those different points?
How does one get $3.5 million from the Canadian government? Did you have to apply for a grant?
Yeah, sort of. A little bit. There are grants, but also it's about cultivating that relationship for a very long time, which we're very good at the Film Center.
Very good. Well, you know, I would like to ask you, because a lot of the other panels are all about disruption, and are you, you know, how do you talk about your role as a disruptor, or do you even see yourselves as disruptors within your organizations? Would anyone like to tackle that first, or Elizabeth, you'd like to start? Or?
Happy to.
Sure.
I think of it in 2 ways. There is the disruption that is happening at or on us, and the disruption that needs to happen within our organization. It's both of those. There's no question in my mind that I am a disruptor I am perceived as a disruptor both in the industry as I think about the creation of product that has not existed before, or the changing of how we would offer that product. And there is also no question that I am perceived as a disruptor internally, and that is simply because, you know, there's the way things have been that have not had to admit of the digital realities that really confront us today. I see my role as being one that has to be equal parts pioneer and equal parts parson. Pioneer because I'm helping vision and map the untracked, you know, the untracked territories, right? But has to be equally parson, parson as in, you know, reverend, right? Because you have to have a reverence for the essential product that is offered, this in-hall live artistic product. And if you don't understand or revere that, forget it. You're not gonna have a prayer.
I should say, beyond the 13 years of Major League Baseball, was it 13 or 9?
13. Yeah.
You are also a conductor as well, and so you actually have a real innate sense of what's important to Lincoln Center. You were pretty much raised there.
Right. I've been a regular there, yes, and I have a connection to the art forms that I do think is helpful in being a disruptor. There's no question about that. But we also have to be good listeners in these roles, because there are so many stakeholders across changes that need to get made, at least in this particular role. If you are not perceived as and actually listening, and that's parson too, right? Right. You can't pioneer.
How about you, Tom? I mean, again, you've done so many incredible things in your background, very sort of interactive from day one. You're now in a role in a nonprofit, which would seem a lot of inertia, boring, but no, I mean, this is seems to me a very entrepreneurial organization. Does it leave room for you to be a disruptor, or how do you feel about yourself as a disruptor?
You know, I'm a person who thrives on conflict, and yet I don't find that much conflict in my organization. But let me also, though, put in a word for disruptive content. There's a term that we sort of coined in public radio, the so-called driveway moment, when you park the car, but you can't get out of the car, you can't turn off the radio, because there's that interview, you need to hear the end of the story. You want to hear the resolution of the aria from the Metropolitan Opera. You've got to hear to the end. There's nothing more, arresting of your mind share than something that's really interesting. So the coin of the realm for us is just great content. And even though I'm the digital guy, I realize that in some ways I play a supporting role to our content engine, producing great stuff, great programming from Radiolab to Alec Baldwin and so forth. That's really what drives us, and that's what is going to sustain our success in the future. Organizationally, look, most of my career has been spent in commercial media, but I've never, in my many years in this space now, felt a greater embrace and acknowledgement that this is the future than I have with New York Public Radio. Even though it is a nonprofit, as you said, it's an extremely entrepreneurial, adventuresome sort of outfit, and I feel very gratified to be in that sort of climate. Looking across public radio or public media as a whole, on the other hand, while there are some very forward-looking people, I'm looking at Alexis Rappo, who's my counterpart at WGBH.
In Boston?
In Boston, is one of the smart set, I'd say, of digital media across the system. I mean, there are ways in which we've got a lot of catching up to do. And, I mentioned earlier this transition from that sanctified place that's been supported by government into this more free-for-all kind of Wild West of a corporate or commercially driven platform. That's, I think, as a system and as a culture, public radio still has some catching up to do to realize what they're up against.
Mm-hmm. And Christine or Anna, I mean, in your roles, do you see yourselves as disruptors? Or?
Sure.
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think that's the definition of a digital job.
Sure.
Still,
yeah, but my impression was that what your role, there was a lot of also social media in bringing in audience. That seems to be traditional marketing. How did you see
Sure.
disruption in your role?
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
I think that I was hired in part for because I have a reputation as a disruptor on the outside, and that's not really earned or true, but from the work I've done with the Online News Association. So I think they brought me in thinking this person is going to come and solve these problems. And it's the point you made, Elizabeth, about you have to, I forget how you said it, it was in the Parsons thing, but that you have to, and Tom said this too, you have to be a believer, and you have to really understand the mission and be a good listener and a good part of it and a good part of the organization. And I think, frankly, I think if I would have had more of an investigative news background, I would have had an easier time disrupting. Instead, I was still sort of the outside guy, and I think it's hard to push from the outside because you're the web girl who only cares about eyeballs.
So who's disrupting in that space, like Spot.us, other citizen-based funding for investigative journalism, others, anyone in the audience might jump in? David Cohn, I think if Shree's still here, was a Knight Fellow.
Even ProPublica, CIR
right.
In California. I mean, there's some amazing...
Center for Investigative Reporting.
In California. Right. And the Center for Public Integrity, too. I mean, they were one of the founding partners in this Public Insight Network, which is a brilliant idea, which is to... you guys use this, too, right? So... that you cultivate a group of hundreds of thousands of people that you can reach out to on a regular basis for crowdsourcing, basically, or however you want to use them. The biggest thing, I guess, and it goes back to internally, there's really no problem in saying, things with marketing and social media. The disruption came with saying, look, you guys, you came here to do long-form investigative work, but we have to create other kinds of content and change the frequency of that content in order to meet the needs of this audience, the audience today. That was a really hard sell.
I'll be the sort of shit disturber here and say I kind of miss being a disruptor. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like what we're doing is so mainstream now, right? That in fact before I could just sort of show them something like, I don't know, think of something, Flash on the web, and people thought it was crazy, While as now, this was in '97, at the Film Center, we did the first user-generated content site in Canada, and that was like a massive disruption when we brought the Canadian Public Broadcasting as our partner to do that. But today, I actually feel like, in a way, it's not as much fun sometimes because what I have to bring in is the hard data. So, you know, we were talking about this earlier, which is one of the key things that I'm really kind of obsessed with is how do we moneyball TV? How do we moneyball feature film? How do we moneyball, you know, gaming, et cetera? Which is we now have at our fingertips, you know, all this data analytics, and that's not necessarily a disruptor's job. It's almost like a full-blown, you know, hard analytic person job that the CEO needs to understand is critical in your company. And I think Albert sort of spoke to that earlier. And so for me, it's less about the fun stuff that technology can bring to an organization that I used to be able to do. You know, whether that's interactive art stuff that we did a lot of, but now it's more about actually getting into the nitty-gritty of how do we actually make stuff that will sell and that will have longevity over the long haul. And as a not-for-profit, that's actually the most disruptive part because typically you're so mission-based that those types of commercial interests aren't necessarily as important.
I'm glad you brought up Moneyball, because if you like the movie Moneyball, Elizabeth Scott did a lot of the licensing to get all the MLB footage into the movie.
For baseball is my last project before I left baseball.
Right.
But it's absolutely right. I mean, Billy Beane says in that, adapt or die, right? Or it's the Darwinian, you know, survival of the fittest is not the biggest and the strongest. It's the most adaptive, right? And it's exactly what you're talking about, which is our being able to work with. I mean, data is going to be so important to all of our making the case for what it is that we need to do going forward. I would say a good chunk of my time is dedicated to both arguing for the importance of our being able to get that and mine that with human capital and infrastructure, and then actually mining that to be able to make, you know, to say what it is that you can do.
I agree. I think, you know, thanks, Albert, for bringing that up, because the most critical position going forward, and probably the most unglamorous, is insights and analytics. These people are going to be getting paid big bucks because it's part art, part science. You got to be able to look at a spreadsheet and say, you know what, there's some interesting trends, but then be able to bubble that up into a story that you can tell the CEO and you can tell the business unit leaders, this is where we need to focus our efforts going forward. It takes a certain skill set to be able to do that, and these are the people who are sitting right now doing insights and analytics at big MSOs, cable companies. But what's happening now, as I mentioned in my previous presentation this morning, 90% of the IT budget is going to be outside of IT by the end of the decade. What does that mean? That means that marketing is now going out and they're doing their own analytics. They're not going to wait for the IT guy to get off his butt and give you a report on where the new sales are coming from. They're using Radian6, they're using Wildfire, they're using, you know, insights from mobile, they're taking data from Facebook and Twitter. They don't need IT anymore, and they're going and purchasing Amazon Web Services and going up in the cloud. So this is a tremendous shift, because guess what? Now marketing, now marketing has ROI, right? Marketing in the past, they used to go beg the CEO for another couple of $1 million for a radio ad or a TV ad, and the CEO sits there and says, you're crazy, it's not returning any investment. Now they can actually show, here's what your investment got me, and here's how we can improve it just by doing certain things.
Not just ROI, accountability, right? For whether it's marketing, whether it's a digital initiative generally, media, I mean, we can track all of this stuff.
Sure.
We can say exactly how successful it is, and this is a
as we were saying before too.
New for a world where it can be a little mushy.
Change one thing on a web form where you say, give me your name and your title, and guess what? I want your address, and then you see your drop-off rate go down by 30% just because you added one more field on a web form. These are tangible results. Like, you can actually see how to improve your data, get more entries into the database. Maybe you're not going to get as much information, but you'll have a bigger list. So what's your trade-off? Do you want a bigger list, or do you want more behavioral data on your users? So I'm glad you all brought that up. This is what we were talking about, disruption. Yeah. Christine, anything to add on?
One of the things that this sort of starts to bleed into is this idea about how do you push an agenda in a mission-based organization.
Right.
Sorry, I know that's like one of your next questions, but
it's the best point. And also, you know, how do you do it in keeping the integrity? Because this is different than a customer. This is, how do you call it, Tom? I mean, these are donors, they're patrons, patrons of the arts. You don't want to consider it a consumer. You really are thinking of someone who you want to establish a long-term relationship
Absolutely.
with. Right.
But
Treat them
even
like gold.
internally deciding within your organization, what are we going to spend resource on? What are we going to spend money on? In a commercial entity, you have pretty simple metrics. Is it going to make money? Is it not going to make money? And then you have an exit plan. And in a mission-based organization that I have found, the metrics for success are a little mushier. We want impact, and you can define impact in a number of different ways, some of which are measurable and some are really squishy. And so, you know, something Vivian said starting us off this morning has just stuck with me because it's so the opposite of what I think, yet I think she's awesome. And so I'm like, I think the opposite of something Vivian Schiller thinks. I must be an idiot. But she said she was given the freedom to, you don't have to drive tune in, Vivian, just go do your digital thing. I feel like in order to get the stuff you want, you have to actually show how you are hitting the core and how your digital strategy isn't over here in a corner, but that it integrates and it's the organization's strategy. But I thought she kind of said the opposite. But in my experience, to get A, I've had to give B. I've had to say, no, I don't have a digital strategy. I have an organizational strategy with these little pieces over here.
And it's interesting. You're right. There's a CDO at NBC News, Vivian. There's a CDO at NBC Universal, right, the mothership. There's at Fox. You had Jonathan Miller at News Corp, who was at the mothership, but then you have another chief digital officer at Fox Digital News. There's and you have to have an overall strategy, because when you go on ad hoc, it becomes fragmented and resources are split up throughout the organization that could be better spent if you put a lot of effort behind the platform and behind the infrastructure that you can then plug in the apps across the framework. But Tom, any thoughts on that? And
well, just to get back to data for a second, I think we actually have a special opportunity here in the nonprofit community for data, because if we all agree that data is the currency of digital media, as technologies become more sophisticated and invasive and creepy in the way that they track personal data, again, given the unique compact between our audience and us, given their direct proprietary interest in what we do, provided we handle it right and don't abuse that trust, I think we have an opportunity to gather, leverage, interpret, and then target the best outcome of that data and personal data collection in ways that really can advance our cause, from programming, from product, from underwriting, from membership, across the board.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Their
Totally.
investedness in our success and in our product will allow them to do. I'll give more to the New York Philharmonic than I will to Coca-Cola, right? In terms of output, right?
I mean, our take on that is slightly different in that, so you asked the question of who owns the audience. So as a center that's devoted to sort of creating that next generation storyteller, what we're saying is, if you're creating content, you need to own your audience, because everyone else is going to try to own it for you, own them for you. So then, how do you then manage the tensions that will come from that? How do you negotiate that? How do you turn a creator into someone who also understands data, or do they need to, or how do they then build their teams differently? So this is actually a lot. There's a lot of still unanswered questions to solve in that problem.
I hate to get wonky on you, but who owns the database? What are you using? You got a CRM? I mean, you're using analytic tools? Are you going through IT to get this stuff done? Do you do it yourself? I know it's a lot of questions, but who owns all this stuff? You or the IT people?
Excellent question, David. We are currently, this is very top of mind because we're engaged now in that very painful process of moving on to a new CRM, and organizationally, I think we're figuring out where this fits, because traditionally there's no real place for that, but among digital, among membership, among marketing, among the multiple constituencies.
You're one of the 90% who's going to be out of IT, I guess. Sounds that way.
Sounds that way.
Get them more into marketing, or
the story has yet to be written there.
Right. Right. Any others want to?
Well, when you work in a tiny place, so
it's all you.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I was saying to somebody, I have oversight for the technology that runs the website, which you would imagine, but I also have oversight over the technology that powers the phones, and really, so I get, somebody said earlier, they get phone calls when it's too warm. I get phone calls when the phone doesn't work, or I can't attach an email to, an attachment to my email. But it's good, because we're all, it's 35 people, and so we're all literally sitting in the same room, and so we have very, I feel like I have complete access to, to those analytics and to that data.
Now, Elizabeth, 11 properties. Is Juilliard's system separate from the Met and from what's going on there?
It's a great question. I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us to be leveraging common systems, and that's part of, and actually a great example of that on our campus. If you look at the digital blades that are outside of the halls, those are populated and run by Lincoln Center on behalf of all of the constituents. Even our homepage of lincolncenter.org is the same thing. But it's a great question, even leaving outside the 11 constituents, within the organization, what do you put where, right?
Right.
And
department-wise, you mean?
Department-wise,
Yeah,
absolutely. And
right.
and I can give you an interesting, different analog in the world of baseball afterwards. But here it's, what are those investments that are so going to serve the enterprise that they should sit out of a particular organization? And what are those that we should let not that we want to be operating in silos, but let's face it, sometimes we do, the silo of X own, right? And we struggle with this all the time and have good productive conversation internally about it. Things that are services, services for the whole organization. So I see a role for an analytics human capital piece that sits at the core of the organization, where planning and development can ask of it. Where programming
maybe
can ask
matrixed
of it,
into sales and marketing. Right.
Exactly, and that's where the accountability piece is better.
Right.
Otherwise, you get the fox guarding the henhouse. At some level, if you've got marketing only in control of analytics, those sorts of things. One little interesting analogy, I was at baseball at the time where they determined to hive off, for lack of a legal term, all the rights that related to digital to a separate company.
Wow.
Forget unit, like a digital officer unit, a separate company. So of course you have the push and pull that happens with having what was perceived as competitors in the industry under the same ownership structure of the baseball teams. So that's one way to do it that's quite differently. You sit in a role at like at Lincoln Center, a chief digital officer there is surfing across all all parts of the organization and looking to build centrally those enterprise-related infrastructures and people that will serve all of them.
Fascinating.
For us, I think
Analytics.
we're just in the process of trying to sort out how to marry our individual giving data with our potential crowd investing initiatives. So there's an opportunity there where individual giving is not so much just purely from a philanthropic perspective going into the not-for-profit, but what are the opportunities for individual donors to actually start to potentially become investors in the products that we end up developing.
Right.
We don't have an answer to that yet, but that's certainly where we're going to be heading.
Great. Well, I don't want to monopolize it with all this wonky talk. I hope this is useful for you. But I know that we have about 10 minutes, and I do want to take Q&A from the audience. I know we have some reps from everywhere, from Carnegie Hall in the audience, and I have to give credit to Linda Perry-Lube, who was previously, she was going to serve on this panel when she was Chief Digital Officer at the American Museum for Natural History. She has now moved on to be CDO at RF Binder, but had an incredible iPhone app at the museum, and I wonder if maybe you want to someone have Linda's right there, Dan. Do you want to chat about it, just briefly, what you did at the museum?
Not about the app, but
Sure.
I think one of the things that we all, I think, are struggling with is just this, how much of our job is about changing the culture, and I think that's really prevalent in the not-for-profit world. You're a disruptor, but I can only echo and agree with some of the things Elizabeth and Christine and everyone said about how much you have to be a listener and a participant, and how much of your job ends up being not about creating the great app, which I had a great time doing that stuff, but how much it is about moving, in my case, a 19th century institution into the 21st century, and then having to remind them, guys, it's 2013. We're 13 years into the 21st century. So you can only do the turning radius so much. So
Well, you're very
I admire
humble,
that.
though. I have to say, say, you know, you think about the old days when you'd go to a museum and you'd see a picture on a wall and, you know, you'd get headphones and a little cassette. Now imagine you go to the museum and you take a picture of what a QR code and you can listen through your iPhone. You know, you're wearing your iPhone anyway. You don't even have to be in the museum, I assume, to take a tour. I mean, a beautiful app. It was an award-winning app, so I know how humble you are, but congratulations.
Thank you.
On a wonderful application.
I survived.
You did. Sorry. Any other questions for the panel? And yes. Sorry, it was probably poorly named. There are representatives from radio and from performing arts and others, so apologize for we did come up with a better name, I think, thanks to the panel. Thank you.
So I'm interested in understanding how you balance the listening and feeling as though you are part of the enterprise without becoming sort of sucked into the inertia of an established organization. So how do you kind of maintain that disruption while you've also done an excellent job of listening and pretending to be just like the organization you're actually trying to disrupt?
Pretending? So I think I failed at that. I don't know who you were asking, but I don't think I did a good job at that. And people ended up getting mad, because I got mad, because after a while, you work at a certain pace. I love this turning radius concept.
Kirk McDonald, yeah, not
and
Mike.
it was taking a long time, and so in the last few months, I went, you know, this is what we're doing, and I don't care if you don't like me anymore, and I'm not going to smile, and I'm sort of honest. I'm
going to the World Bank.
I'm sort of no. I mean, I really had to. You know, and I know we didn't really want to touch on, personally, this panel of why aren't there more women in this role. I just, let me make a generalization. I want everybody to like me. I want people to smile and to be pleasant, and so at some point you have to be a bitch. And I'm pretty good at it at home, and it's a little bit, it's harder to do at work. So
We're going to tweet that, by the way.
It's probably too late. I just totally forgot that thing is on. But it's a great question, because it's really hard to, I would love to, I'm going to stop talking because I'd love to hear how somebody's done it well.
I'm laughing as I hear everything that Christine says, because there are those times where you feel, when you're with the inertia that was referenced in this question, it's really, this is how we've done things, and when you're looking to change it, you feel like you could be coming up against a wall. So I talked about the listening, but as much active listening as you do, I believe these roles, again, especially in the organizations where it's not a history and a legacy of having a role like yours at Film Center, I think huge amounts of one's time have to be dedicated to educating.
Yeah.
I think specifically about the audience of my senior executives. I think specifically about the audience of my peers, certainly my board, which had the foresight to create this role, but that is only one piece of it, right? There's the supporting of all the things that need to get done, educating a board. Proselytizing, I mean, I take every opportunity to speak on a panel in time that I don't have, because it's essential that we have, you know, things being said out there about what needs to happen.
You nailed it, and that's not just the turning radius, that's the evolution. The evolution of the organization, as I was saying this morning, if you jump into an organization that's not quite there yet, there's going to be some frustrations. And then, like advertising is, I hate to say the most mature, beyond media, advertising has been doing a CDO for a while, so they moved most organizations, and we'll hear more from Jane and the panel with Josh, but most of them have moved beyond the sort of advocacy and education roles to the hands-on operational roles as a CDO. And it's interesting to see when that transition takes place. It takes a little bit of time, but you can tell when that transition takes place. And it may take a different type of CDO to be in there when you need an advocate who's like getting out in front of the brands. They wheel the guy, I hate to say this, advertising people, but you know, they wheel the CDO out of the closet. He tells the brand, we're going to kick ass in digital. They wheel him back into the closet. He doesn't do any work. You know, he's the high-paid navel gazer. They get the deal, they get the client, move on. And then there's this sort of next phase where now it's sort of digital, mature company. They don't wheel him out anymore. He's operational. He's going to help actually deliver for the client. And I don't want to speak for the advertising panel, but I think they are going to touch on that as well, since it is pretty quote-unquote mature in the ad space. But sorry, any addition?
I thought the internal videos were a really great idea, actually. So maybe it's not so much listening as you know, sexy advertising internally. I thought that was really brilliant of Disney to do that, because it's amazing how especially today, I think if you had done that 10 years ago, no one would buy it. But now it seems to, because people want to know what everyone else knows, and that's partially the fear of not being digitally savvy enough that prevents internal culture from changing.
It's just moving too fast. I don't understand
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
you know?
So if you can make it easy for them to feel part of the process through internal advertising.
Yeah, I think there are a number of tactics that I think you can take. Something I've been trying to do recently is take the attitude that I'm really just trying to cultivate or unlock the talent, the enthusiasm that's sort of latent within the organization. An example, a few weeks ago, we had our very first company-wide hackathon, which we invited people from across the organization, digital natives, as well as people who just had downloaded their first app, to come together, for 2 intensive days, spec out some projects, some apps, and build them. And it was a great success. And really, I think cultivated a greater enthusiasm and understanding of the possibilities of what we're trying to do.
Great. Any other questions? Well, please, everyone, give a hand to this panel. I'm so delighted that you were all able to make it.